Let's do this. How does it sound? Cool, maybe a bit boring. Let's try this one. This was twice longer, but it was less boring, isn't it? And the final touch. And now you're angry that I stopped the audio, don't you? You just seen the Habituation Trap in real time, and this flowchart will be your guide to get out of it. Let me show you. So human brain hates if the next moment is exactly the same like the previous moment. Hence, things gets boring. In music production, this translates to creating loops like this. And makes producers live in these 4-bar loops forever and leave the listeners in habituation trap, meaning they get bored of your drops very fast. The way you avoid this is actually by threefolds. Let's go back to our chart. You can make your drops much more entertaining by utilizing this simple 3-rule technique. The timbre mutation, morphing the sounds while you are going along. Rhythmic displacement, the rhythm of your track shifts along, so it's not always the same. And pattern interruption, meaning you feel like you are going to a destination. So you'll leave your listeners wonder what happened next in your tracks. Let's apply this into the 4-bar loop that we have. In our loop, we have our classic low end, a reese on top, drums, and ambience. Hats are kept, drums are crisp, low end sounds balanced. So the problem is not mix, but habituation. Let's start with the first. So the timbre mutation. We're gonna start simple and then we are going to elevate. So every next step will be a bit more advanced, but hopefully you will be hanging around to understand why I am doing each step. I will put more emphasis on why than how, because if you understand why, you will figure out how eventually. First thing, duplicate this so that I have at least an 8-bar formation. So my morphs are not too short that even they get super repetitive. The first, if you have sound with a character, in this case I have this reed sound. These type of leading sounds are your first targets. They are right on top of the mix. If you make changes to them, it is much easier for the users to hear the changes rather than small changes that you make to your background sounds. Your single like is the best motivation that I ever have for making these videos. So give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying the video. Let's start. My idea is like a playing instrument. We can start low, aim for the high here at the end, but I'm gonna play like an instrument. Go up, emphasize the end of the note, go down, something like this. Do you hear the breathe? This is most important part. Hear this again. It creates tension and release inside the bar. It gives the character the sound. Maybe something like this. Do you see? I'm starting low going up. My final destination is even higher, so I even created tension. I'm creating increasing tension in 8 bars, increasing tension on each 2 bars. And we got immediately this. This was controlled morph. You can also modulate the morphing effect. In this case, this white noise, I can actually make it breathe. If you just put a simple EQ and modulate the gain up and down, it will start breathing with your track. Almost like a sidechain, but not really. What happened? We created modulation inside the bar with the noise, modulation in 2 bars in the lead trees, and modulation on whole 8 bars with morphing the cutoff. So what we want now, emphasize the brightness of the sound in certain points in the track, like at the beginning and transitions. Simplest way, you can use small effects to start with and then come back later. In this case, let's put just simple white noise at the beginning of each. And then we can put a reverse so that if we loop this here, so it feels more connected. The morphing almost never ends. You can always morph more. So what I like to do, actually take the next steps before I come back to morphing later on, because I know there will be change of the pattern, maybe even more elements that I can play around. The next one is rhythmic displacement. So you can think this as a train. If you change the ground under the listener's feet, so they can feel a texture, so they can feel entertained. The first thing I'm gonna do, one thing I enjoy a lot, is actually if you take a look at our snares, let's add a texture that snare. Add a reverse snare so that every second hit has this nice check texture to it. But what I like even more is actually playing around my percussions and hats, because that's what real drummers do. That's what we used to hear. Let's start with the perks. It just repeats along like this. Way too much, way too confusing. So we have to pick around, cut pieces off so it fits the track a bit more. Now, this added to the groove. But other thing, let's start also easy. This bass over here, it repeats the pattern. There's one simple trick that you can utilize actually. For the bass, I think the progression is beautiful. One of my favorite progression. If you want to keep the progression, you can actually change the octaves. Rather than going back up here, coming back to the previous tension, I can keep it low, then build up the tension again. And that can also support my 8-bar tension, right? Listen to the change that this introduces. Feels like now we have an 8-bar progression, even though we actually have 4-bar progression. We are not done yet. What I like is actually those tensions that I was building. That's actually something related to also pattern interruption. Pattern interruption means that at certain point, at certain loop lengths, you can do something, interrupt the overall structure, so it feels like we broke the pattern. We kind of reached the destination, and then the new destination arrives afterwards. And now we have a new destination to go from. In dance music, those pattern interruptions oftentimes happens either 4 bars, 8 bars, or 16 bars. 16 bars will be the most prominent ones, but you will even see them at 4 bars and 8 bars. The simple thing could be changing your hi-hat. Not that you change the sound, but you change the pattern. For example, syncopation at around 4-8 bars can add really nice moment of change. Do you hear that? Now, that means that this needs support. The easiest way to support is actually reacting other drum elements to what you change, the pattern that you are building. Like kick, what you can do, let's do a double kick right here. So it gives us like this urgency feeling right at the change. Listen. Do you see? Now we can exaggerate it at the 8-bar because it's a bigger destination, bigger change moment. Instead of triple kick, let's this time utilize offbeat pattern kick, like this. Now we covered all these three. In reality, when you are producers, you never go, why I did this, now I should do this, now I should do this. All these three actually start to morph each other because you realize if I interrupt the pattern, I can morph the timbre and I can change the shift altogether. For example, to create even bigger change in my sound, what does it look like? We can, for example, cut off the bass, change the timbre of the sound right there, like this. So when the bass comes in, you can even feel more. And then you realize, wait a second, my hat, that timbre change, I can edit here. If you take simple noise generator, I'm using Shaper Box, draw something like this, anything that you like. Depending on your track, that means that it will add a noise. At the beginning, it will be almost zero, but it's increase eventually and decrease back again. Listen up. You can do this like a 2 bars, 4 bars. Again, I'm always searching for a balance. Like I want the shorter pattern changes together with the longer pattern changes to create this more variation in whole loop. Look how much this adds immediately. Now I'm feeling, oh wait a second, this can be supported by shift pattern change of my other hats. You see how things can evolve organically. Like this hat, maybe around the end. Right? When I'm rolling the hat, maybe I can accentuate the off hat together. Maybe here I can do a double. Right there. You can probably actually repeat this now. And this bigger breaks the whole pattern of 2 bars. Do you see how things start to evolve very naturally? Now I'm going back thinking, this is way too long. Let's make it shorter, maybe right here. And maybe even not. You see, you can always go back if you feel like it's sometimes too much. It breaks the flow. That was beautiful. It created that we are arriving there now. The problem is now I'm figuring out, right? This is 8 bars, but yes, I arrived there. It was not enough to complete my feelings. I definitely need 16 bars now because once I arrive there, I want to start my next journey, next 8 bars resolution. Let's duplicate this so at least our modulations, automations, pattern changes, everything comes together. The one thing I'm realizing here, the snares or claps need to react to this as well. So let's create the same idea here. Let's double snare here. Right? And here. Oh my god, this is what I mean by arriving at destination. It really feels that. Now, altogether what we need is a leader. While we have the Rhys that is really doing it, it is not enough. Why? Because we need auxiliary leaders, like helping hands to really make us feel like we have arrived the first destination and now we can go for our second destination. That creates the contrast between the 8 bar loops that we have built. In reality, these things often means that you can create auxiliary synths to lead us through that supports the Rhys. Rhys is basic, of course. So you need the higher layers to complement along. This of course will depend on your genre. The genre that I'm making oftentimes suitable for this type of rhythmical patterns and sound. Right? The one important thing is actually we break the pattern with this again. If you see, we are not exactly following the bass, right? Look at that. We are actually creating the secondary melody on top of the bass. So the way you do it, oftentimes you play along and try to figure it out. So if you play together. Look at how much this immediately helps with the feeling. Remember, there's always morphing. Ups, downs, following the bass morph a little bit and going even richer up here. The one trick over here that I pull it down again here. Why? Because I feel like this change requires some type of real tonal change for me to really feel that we arrived at the first destination and we go to second destination. Now, this is not like a change between the drop and a break. It's not a huge change in the timbre. This is change enough to create the contrast. I'm gonna go for the similar sound, but a bit more exciting sound. Reason being, create excitement. This time, we are even creating the third harmony on our bass. Look at this. Remember, morphing. For this sound, I'm not going to utilize the same thing over again because I want to have the contrast here. I want to keep the energy always up. Let's listen here. That doesn't mean that I can still morph stuff. When you have this type of sustained sound, what you can morph, what the players do, they play with the pitch wheel. So I want to still emphasize this 4-bar change. Hence, very simple trick of utilizing pitch drop right here. Also do the final touches. What I want, let's pronounce that change over here by just resampling the tail of this sound. Right? The reverb tail of the synth sounds like this. Reverse it, just R, and put on the bridge over here. The turnaround, the change that we are building all the way. Now we have this. And let's see our approach, morphing the sounds, displacing rhythmically, and interrupting the pattern really worked for us. Let's see if we can feel the texture, the pattern shift, the morph, the sound evolving, and arriving at that destination feeling. Now, the one thing that is not shown on this chart, and one thing that a good producers always have, is the hook. Any drop that is really good needs a hook. And I have a whole hook there over here, so I want you to take a look at that one if you want to learn more about hooks. But in this case, I have my final hook, the final cherry on top of my drop of these vocals. Vocals are from Leaki. She's a very talented singer and artist. So I morphed her vocals into this kind of really catchy ambient voxes. And listen how this makes a top drop to a superior drop immediately.
It breaks me apart. Voice like a river flowing through my veins. Can I find the shoreline, or am I carried back again?
Now you get also a bit more than drop, but I think it is good to understand the whole journey when you really see the bigger picture together as well. I'm gonna put the flow chart, free download, on my Patreon. Go download it, hang it on your wall, so you can always keep that in mind. This is also a small piece about how you can make better arrangements in your track. I have a whole masterclass of 14 hours or 15 hours that I go every single detail of a good arrangement and how people finish their tracks. I will put the link below for that masterclass too if you want to learn more about that. But you don't have to. You can stay here and learn more by watching videos like this.